The elevator door slid open slowly. I stepped out carrying a box of documents, just in time to witness the scene of the neighbors across the hall moving out. Several movers were carrying a sofa inside. I glanced over instinctively, then froze in place. That black leather sofa, I recognize it. For years ago, we picked it out together at the furniture store. Careful, don't bump it against the wall. A familiar voice drifted from inside the room. My heart skipped a beat. Could it really be that coincidental? Just as I was thinking this, a tall figure emerged from the doorway, dressed simply in a white t-shirt and jeans, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing well-defined forearms. He was still so handsome. For years on, Gary was still the same Gary. He saw me too, his footsteps halting as those deep, piercing eyes locked onto mine. Kitty, he called my name, his voice laced with disbelief. I steeled myself and nodded. Yeah, it's me. The air froze instantly. The movers were still bustling about, while the two of us stood there in the hallway, locked in a silent stare. When we broke up 4 years ago, I swore a bitter oath that lightning would strike me if I ever saw Gary again. Now it seemed my retribution was drawing near. Mom. A babyish voice called out from behind me. My son dashed out of the elevator and threw his arms around my legs. Mom, why didn't you wait for Alan? My 3-year-old son Alan looked up at me with his little face tilted, his big eyes brimming with hurt. I quickly set down the box I was holding and picked him up. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Mommy got distracted just now. Gary's gaze fell on Alan, his brow furrowing slightly. This is my son, I answered before he could finish the question. Gary's expression changed instantly, turning grim. He scrutinized Alan from head to toe, his gaze growing increasingly intense. Alan bore a striking resemblance to me, but there was something about his eyes and brows that was undeniably. How old is he? Gary asked. 3. He calculated the time, his face darkening further. Kitty, we need to talk. I hugged Alan tightly and shook my head. There's nothing to talk about. You move into your new place, I'll live my life. We'll stay out of each other's business. With that, I started walking toward my home, still holding Alan. Gary reached out and stopped me. Wait. What else is there? I stopped in my tracks. He glanced at Alan, then at me, hesitating to speak. In the end, he said nothing, only muttered, "We'll be neighbors from now on." I nodded and ignored him, carrying Alan inside. The moment I closed the door, I leaned against it and let out a long sigh of relief. Alan slipped down from my arms and asked curiously, "Mommy, who was that man?" A familiar face. I crouched down and stroked his little head. He's so handsome, just like the big brothers on TV, Alan said innocently. I gave a wry smile. Yes, Gary was handsome, so handsome you couldn't take your eyes off him. For years ago, I was utterly captivated by his good looks, which is why I fell head over heels for him without hesitation. But love is such a fragile thing sometimes. A single misunderstanding can tear two people who love each other apart. I never thought I'd see him again in this lifetime. But then, he actually moved in across the hall from me. What kind of soap opera plot is this? Alan ran off to play with his toys in the living room, while I stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, my mind in complete disarray. For years have passed, and I thought I'd long since let go. But the moment I saw him today, my heart still beat wildly against my will. Some people are truly etched into your very bones. No matter how much time passes, when you meet again, your heart still skips a beat. But things are different now. I have Alan. I'm a mother now. I can't be as reckless as I was 4 years ago. I have to protect my child and make sure no one hurts him. That includes his own father. Yes, Alan is Gary's son. 4 years ago when we broke up, I was already pregnant, though I didn't even know it myself. By the time I found out, I was already 3 months along. I considered telling Gary, but remembering the things he said when we parted, I chose to bear it alone. All these years, I've raised Alan on my own. Though it's been tough, it's also been incredibly fulfilling. Alan is my whole world. I don't want anyone to disrupt our life together, not even his father. Dinner's ready. Alan and I sit down at the table to eat. Alan suddenly asked, "Mom, do I have a dad?" My hand trembled, nearly knocking over the soup bowl. "Why do you ask?" "All the kids at kindergarten have dads, but I don't. Today the teacher even asked why my dad doesn't come to pick me up." Alan hung his head, his voice tinged with sadness. My heart ached as if pierced by needles. I reached out to touch his little face. "Alan, you have a dad. Then where is he?" Alan lifted his head, his eyes brimming with hope. I opened my mouth, but no words came. I couldn't very well tell him, "Your dad lives right next door, but we can't acknowledge him." Dad's working far away. He'll come back to see Alan once he's done with his work." I told a lie. Alan nodded, half understanding. "Then when can I see Dad?" "We'll see each other soon." I forced a smile. Truthfully, I didn't know when Alan would get to meet his father. Or rather, I didn't know when I'd muster the courage to let Gary know Alan existed. After dinner, I put Alan to bed and sat in the living room, lost in thought. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole and saw Gary. He was dressed differently and holding something in his hand. I hesitated for a moment, but opened the door anyway. "So late, what's the matter?" Gary handed me what he was holding, a box of exquisite pastries. "We disturbed you while moving in earlier. Consider this an apology." I took the pastries and nodded. "Thanks." Gary didn't leave right away. Instead, he looked at me. "Kitty, about your son. He has nothing to do with you," I cut him off. "Really?" Gary's eyes were sharp. "Then why does he look so much like me when I was a kid?" My heart skipped a beat, but I forced myself to remain calm. "Kids all look alike. You're overthinking it." Gary gave me a long, searching look. "I hope you're right." With that, he turned and walked back to his own house. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding like a drum. It seemed Gary was already suspicious. I had to be more careful. I couldn't let him discover the truth. Not yet, at least. The next morning, I took Alan to kindergarten as usual. Just as I stepped outside, I ran into Gary, who was also getting ready to leave. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, radiating the aura of a successful man. For years had made him even more mature and steady. "Good morning." He greeted me first. "Morning," I replied politely, then started walking toward the elevator with Alan in tow. But Alan suddenly stopped, tilting his little face up to look at Gary. "Uncle, are you going out too?" Gary crouched down to meet Alan's gaze. "Yes, Uncle is going to work." "What does Uncle do for a living?" Alan asked curiously. "Uncle's a lawyer," Gary answered gently. "A lawyer?" I was a bit surprised. For years ago he was still an architect. I never imagined he'd switch careers. "Wow, that's amazing." Alan's eyes lit up. "Uncle, do you catch bad guys?" Gary smiled. "Lawyers don't catch bad guys, but they help good people." "So is Uncle a good person?" "What do you think, Alan?" Alan looked at Gary intently, then nodded. "Uncle is so handsome, he must be a good person." Gary burst out laughing. "So Alan wants to be friends with his uncle?" "Yes." Alan answered without hesitation. Watching the two of them chatting so happily, I felt a bit conflicted. Blood ties really are something special. Even without knowing each other's identities, father and son could grow close so quickly. "Alan, we should go now or we'll be late," I urged. Alan waved goodbye to Gary with some reluctance. "Bye, Uncle." "Bye, Alan." Gary waved back. The elevator arrived, and the three of us stepped inside together. The elevator was quiet, with only the sound of buttons being pressed. Upon reaching the first floor, Gary stepped out first. "Bye, Uncle." Alan waved again. Gary turned, smiled at Alan, then got into a black Mercedes. I led Alan toward the kindergarten, and Alan kept talking about the uncle he'd just seen all the way there. "Mom, that uncle is so nice, and he's really handsome." "Is that so?" I replied absent-mindedly. "Mom, do you think my dad is that handsome too?" Alan suddenly asked. I paused. "Why do you ask?" "Because the teacher said all kids look like their parents, and since I look like Mom, Dad must be really handsome too, right?" I gave a wry smile. "Yes, your dad is handsome too. Even more handsome than that uncle. Because they're actually the same person." After dropping Alan off at kindergarten, I headed to work at the company. I work as a graphic designer at an advertising agency. Though the job is demanding, the pay is decent, enough to support both Alan and me. As soon as I arrived at the office, a colleague rushed over to gossip. "Kitty, I heard a super hot guy moved into your neighborhood?" I froze. "How did you know?" "My cousin lives in your complex. Yesterday she saw the moving truck and spotted this incredibly handsome guy. She snapped a photo and posted it on her social feed. The moment I saw it, he looked familiar, like I'd seen him somewhere before." As she spoke, Dora pulled out her phone to show me a photo. In the picture, Gary was directing workers as they moved things, his profile sculpted to perfection. "What do you think? Isn't he gorgeous? Have you ever seen him?" Dora asked excitedly. I nodded. "Yeah, I've met him. He lives right across from me." "What?" Dora gasped. "Then you've got the perfect opportunity. Go for it." I shook my head. "Forget it. I'm not in the mood for dating." "Why?" "Raising a child alone is so hard, wouldn't it be better to find a man to share the burden?" "I'm used to being alone. This won't do. Alan needs a father's love too." Dora pleaded with me earnestly. I fell silent. Dora was right, Alan truly needed a father's love. Yesterday he asked me about Dad, and I could see the longing in his eyes. But could Gary truly give Alan the fatherly love he needs? For years ago, when we broke up, he said some really harsh things. He said we weren't compatible, that he didn't want a girlfriend who would hold him back in his career. Back then, I had just graduated and was in an unstable job, so I really couldn't help him much. Meanwhile, he was already making a name for himself at the Design Institute, with a bright future ahead. The gap between us kept growing wider, and breaking up seemed inevitable. Though I know he said those things in the heat of the moment, they still cut me deeply. If it weren't for Alan, our paths should never have crossed again. Yet now, fate has brought us together once more. I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse. After work, I went to pick up Alan from kindergarten. The teacher pulled me aside. Today Alan told the class he met a really handsome uncle, and said that uncle might be his dad. My heart skipped a beat. He was just joking. Don't take it seriously. I know, I just wanted to remind you that Alan really craves his father's love. If possible, you might consider finding him a stepfather. The teacher's words have made me even more conflicted. When I got home, I was so distracted while cooking that I almost cut my hand. Just then, the doorbell rang again. I opened the door to find Gary standing there. "What are you doing here again?" Gary held up the takeout box. "I ordered way too much food for one person. Want to join me?" I was about to refuse when Alan came running out of the kitchen. "Uncle." He happily threw himself at Gary, who effortlessly picked him up. "Was Alan a good boy at kindergarten today?" "Yes. The teacher even praised me," Alan said proudly. "That's wonderful." Gary kissed his little cheek. Watching their affectionate moment, I felt a mix of emotions. "Mom, Uncle Gary wants to treat us to dinner." Alan turned to me and said. Facing my son's eager eyes, I simply couldn't bring myself to refuse. "All right," Gary murmured, a faint smile playing on his lips. We ate in our dining room, and Gary was very attentive to Alan, constantly serving him food and making him laugh. Alan was quite fond of him too, constantly pestering him for conversation. Uncle, do you have kids? Alan suddenly asked. Gary paused. No. Do you want any? Yes. Gary glanced at me. Very much. I lowered my head, unable to meet his gaze. When will Uncle have one? When Uncle finds the right person to marry, he'll have one. What does Uncle think of my mom? Alan asked innocently. I nearly choked on my rice and gulped down water. Gary gave me a deep look. Your mom is wonderful, beautiful and capable. Will Uncle marry my mom? Then Uncle will have a child, and Alan will have a dad. Alan's words instantly made the restaurant atmosphere awkward. I was so embarrassed I wanted to crawl into a hole. Alan, don't say things like that, I quickly stopped him. I didn't say anything out of line. The teacher said parents have to love each other to get married and have kids. Uncle likes mom, and mom likes uncle, why can't they get married? Who said mom likes uncle? My face flushed. Mom kept stealing glances at uncle just now, and she even blushed. What else could it be but liking him? Alan looked dead serious. When did this kid's observational skills get so sharp? Gary chuckled, Alan's really sharp. I shot him a glare, but he just grinned even wider. After dinner, Gary helped clear the table and prepared to leave. Alan grabbed his hand and wouldn't let go. Uncle, will you come again tomorrow? If your mom says it's okay, Gary said, looking at me. Before I could answer, Alan piped up, Mom says it's okay. Right, Mom? Facing my son's expectant gaze, I could only nod. Gary smiled with satisfaction, see you tomorrow then. After he left, I bathed Alan and put him to bed. Lying in bed, Alan suddenly said, Mom, I like that uncle. Why? Because my uncle was so kind to me and doted on me. Just like other kids' dads. My heart took a hard pang. Alan, do you want a dad? Alan nodded vigorously, yes. If Mom told you that you actually have a dad, would you be happy? Really? Alan sat up, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Where's my dad? Seeing his eager expression, I suddenly didn't know what to say. Mom, is that Uncle my dad? Alan asked abruptly. I froze. Why would you think that? Because my teacher said all little kids look like their parents. I think my eyes look like my uncle's, and since he's so kind to me, it must be because I'm his child. Kids' intuition is sometimes really spot on. I didn't know what to say, so I just held him close. Alan, no matter what, Mommy will always love you. I know, Mommy loves Alan the most, Alan said, nestling into my arms. But Alan wants Daddy's love too. I closed my eyes, tears nearly spilling over. Perhaps I really should consider telling Gary the truth. Not for my own sake, but for Alan's. He deserves to know his father and has the right to understand his own origins. Over the weekend, I was deep cleaning the house when the doorbell rang again. Gary had been coming by almost every day lately, either delivering food or toys for Alan, making Alan grow increasingly attached to him. I opened the door and sure enough, it was him again. What is it this time? I asked. I'd like to take Alan to the amusement park. Would you mind? Gary asked bluntly. Just as I was about to refuse, Alan came running out of the living room. Uncle. Are you taking me to the amusement park? Yes, Uncle wants to have fun with Alan. Gary crouched down and ruffled his hair. Great. I've never been to an amusement park before. Alan jumped up with excitement. Seeing my son so happy, I just couldn't bring myself to say no. Well, then let's go together. No, I'd like to take Alan by myself. Is that okay? Gary looked at me, his expression serious. I hesitated. Letting Gary take Alan out alone, what if he found out something? Mommy, I want to go with Uncle. Alan tugged at my hand. But I'll take good care of him. Trust me, Gary said earnestly. In the end, I agreed. Watching them walk hand in hand toward the elevator, I felt a mix of emotions. Perhaps this was fate's way of giving father and son a chance to be alone together. After they left, I paced restlessly at home. On one hand, I worried about Alan's safety, on the other, I feared Gary might discover something. Alan's birth certificate is still in my possession, listing his father as unknown. At the time, to avoid complications, I didn't include Gary's name. But if Gary ever truly suspects, he can request a paternity test. Then, nothing can be hidden anymore. Shortly after 3 in the afternoon, they returned. As soon as Alan walked in, he excitedly showed me the toys Gary had bought him. "Mom, look. Uncle bought me so many toys." I glanced at the toys, all high-end brands, quite pricey. "These are too expensive," I told Gary. "It's okay, I like Alan." Gary smiled and said, "Besides, he deserves the best." The implication in his words made my heart tighten. Alan had gone to his room to play with his toys, leaving only Gary and me in the living room. "Kitty, we need to talk," Gary said, his expression turning serious. "What are we talking about?" I forced myself to stay calm. "About Alan." Gary looked me straight in the eye. "Today at the amusement park, an employee said Alan looks just like me and asked if he was my son." My heart started racing. "What did you say?" I said no. Gary paused. "But now I'm starting to wonder if that staff member was right." I took a deep breath. "Gary, I know what you're going to say, but he's my son, right?" Gary cut me off. I opened my mouth but couldn't speak. Gary saw the answer in my expression. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice trembled slightly. "I have the right to know I have a son." "You have the right?" I suddenly snapped. "What did you say 4 years ago? You said I'd hold you back in your career, that we weren't right for each other. If I'd told you I was pregnant back then, would you have wanted this child?" Gary froze. "You wouldn't." I'm on the verge of tears. "You'd make me abort him and then vanish completely from your life." "I wouldn't." Gary's voice was faint. "You would." I shouted. "Because back then, all you cared about was your career, nothing else." The living room fell silent, broken only by my sobs. Alan came running out of his room. "Mommy, why are you crying?" I quickly wiped away my tears, crouched down, and hugged him. "It's okay, Mommy isn't crying." Alan looked at me, then at Gary, as if sensing something. "Uncle, did you make Mom angry?" Alan asked. Gary crouched down to meet Alan's gaze. "Alan, Uncle wants to ask you a question." "What question?" "If Uncle is your dad, would you be happy?" Alan's eyes lit up instantly. "Really? Uncle is really my dad?" Gary nodded. "Yes, Uncle is your dad." Alan instantly threw himself into Gary's arms. "Dad. I finally have a dad." Watching the heartwarming scene of father and son embracing, I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. This secret I'd kept for over 3 years had finally been revealed. "Mom, I have a dad now." Alan ran over and grabbed my hand. "Our family of 3 can be together now, right?" I looked at his expectant little face, unsure what to say. Gary stood up and walked over to me. "Kitty, I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" I choked out. "I'm sorry for what I said 4 years ago. I'm sorry for making you bear so much alone. I'm sorry for missing out on Alan's growth." His apology came so suddenly that I didn't know how to respond at first. What's the point of saying all this now? I wiped away my tears. Time doesn't run backward. What's missed is missed. "What about now?" Gary asked. "Do we still have a chance?" I shook my head. "Gary, it's impossible for us." "Why?" "Because there's no trust left between us. 4 years ago, you gave up on our relationship so easily, who knows if you might do the same again this time." "I won't." Gary cut me off. These past 4 years, I've been filled with regret, constantly wondering what might have been if I hadn't said those things back then. Now God has given me a chance to make things right, and I won't let it slip away again. Alan looked at me, then at Gary, and said in his babyish voice, "Mommy and Daddy, please don't fight. Alan wants a whole family." Hearing my son's words, my heart softened. But was starting over really that easy? "I need time to think," I finally said. Gary nodded. "I'll wait for you." From that day on, Gary's attitude changed dramatically. Every day after work, he would come to see Alan, telling him stories and playing games with him, acting every bit the devoted father. Alan quickly adjusted to life with his dad, clinging to Gary every day as if he couldn't get enough of him. Watching their deep bond, I felt both heartened and conflicted. It was a relief that Alan finally received the fatherly love he'd longed for, but I was torn about how to face Gary. That night, after Alan fell asleep, Gary didn't leave as he usually did. Instead, he sat in the living room and talked with me. "How have you been these past years?" he asked. "Thankfully, Alan keeps me company, so I'm not alone," I said. "What about work?" "I'm a designer at an ad agency." "It's pretty stable." Gary nodded. "You must work hard." "It's nothing. Alan is my treasure. Anything I do for him is worth it." "What about me?" Gary suddenly asked, "Is there still a place for me in your heart?" I froze for a moment, unable to answer. To say there wasn't would be a lie. If there truly wasn't, my heart wouldn't have raced the moment I saw him again. But to say there was, I feared getting hurt all over again. "Kitty, I know you're still angry with me, and I know nothing I say can make up for past mistakes. But I want you to know that in these 4 years, I've never forgotten you." Gary's voice was soft, but every word reached my ears clearly. "The first year after we broke up, I wanted to call you every day, to go find you, but my pride wouldn't let me. I thought time would heal everything, that I could forget you and start over." He paused for a moment before continuing, "But I just can't do it. Whenever the night grows still, I remember your smile and all the happy times we shared together. I've tried dating other girls, but none of them could ever win my heart." Listening to his words, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. It wasn't until later that I realized some people, once missed, become a lifelong regret. "I thought I'd never have the chance to see you again in this lifetime, yet fate brought us back together." "Gary." I tried to speak, but he cut me off. "You don't have to give me an answer right now. I can wait. No matter how long it takes, I'm willing to wait. I just hope you'll give me a chance to prove I'm not the same Gary who only knew how to work 4 years ago." After saying that, he stood up to leave. "Gary," I called after him. If I had told you I was pregnant back then, would you really have made me get an abortion?" Gary turned to face me, his expression earnest. "No, absolutely not. No matter what, I would never hurt you or the baby." His answer warmed my heart. Maybe I really should give him a chance. And give myself one too. On the weekend, Gary suggested taking us out for a spring outing. "It's the perfect time of year, the scenery outside is beautiful, and Alan will love it," he said. At the mention of going out, Alan jumped up excitedly. Yes. Yes. I want to see the flowers." I looked into their expectant eyes and nodded. We drove to a park on the outskirts of town, where vast groves of cherry trees were in full bloom. Pink petals drifted through the air, creating a scene as beautiful as a fairy tale. Alan was so thrilled by the breathtaking scenery that he ran around excitedly, with Gary following behind to protect him, afraid he might fall. Watching their backs, I suddenly felt as if time had reversed. 4 years ago, we were just like this. Back then, we were still dreaming of a bright future, dreaming of the day we could have children of our own. I never imagined it would actually come true. "Mom, come see." Alan beckoned to me from beneath the flowering tree. I walked over and saw him holding a fallen cherry blossom. "This flower is so beautiful, I want to give it to Mom," he said, handing it to me. I took the flowers and ruffled his hair. "Thanks, Alan." "I want to give Mom a flower too," Gary suddenly said. He walked to a cherry blossom tree, gently shook a branch, and petals drifted down. He caught the most perfect one and came before me. "For you," he said. As I looked at the flower in his hand, I remembered that spring 4 years ago. Back then, we were also under the cherry blossom trees. He gave me a cherry blossom like this, then kissed me. "Thank you," I said, taking the flower as my heartbeat quickened. "Dad, why didn't you kiss Mom?" Alan suddenly asked. My face flushed instantly. Gary chuckled, "Because I need Mom's permission first." "So, Mom, do you approve?" Alan asked innocently. I didn't know how to respond, so I changed the subject. "Let's go over there and take a look." In the afternoon, we ate at the restaurant in the park. After eating his fill, Alan lay down on the table and fell asleep. Gary and I sat across from him, the atmosphere growing quiet. "Kitty, I want to ask you something," Gary suddenly spoke up. "What is it?" "If you could turn back time, would you still choose to be with me?" I thought for a moment. "I don't know. Maybe, maybe not." "Why?" "Because I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago." I looked at Alan, sleeping peacefully. "Now, I'm first and foremost a mother, and only then a woman. I have to take responsibility for Alan. I can't be as impulsive as I used to be." Gary nodded. "I understand. But if I promise you I'll love you and Alan well, would you consider starting over with me?" I remained silent for a long time before saying, "Gary, love isn't something you can promise. Feelings are too unpredictable. So tell me, what do I have to do for you to believe me?" "I don't know. I'm being honest when I say, maybe time will give me the answer." Gary looked at me, his eyes gentle. "Then I'll wait for time to give the answer." On the way home, Alan slept soundly in the back seat while I sat in the front passenger seat, watching the scenery pass by. Gary drove steadily, occasionally glancing at Alan through the rearview mirror. "He looks just like you when you were little," he said suddenly. "How did you know what I looked like when I slept as a kid?" I asked curiously. "Just guessed," Gary chuckled. "But I remember you liked to hold something while you slept, just like he's holding that little bear now." I glanced at Alan in the back seat, sleeping with the teddy bear in his arms, and felt a warm glow inside. Gary is so thoughtful, he remembers even these little details. When we got home, Alan was still asleep. Gary carried him upstairs and gently laid him on the bed. "Thanks for taking us out today," I said to Gary. "You're welcome, I'm really happy." Gary gazed at the sleeping Alan with a tender look. "This is the first time I've taken him out. It feels unreal." "You'll get used to it," I said. "Kitty." Gary suddenly called my name. "Thank you for giving birth to Alan, and thank you for raising him so well." His words made my nose sting. "He's my child, of course I'll be good to him." "He's my child too." Gary looked at me. "From now on, I'll be good to him, and to both of you." I nodded without saying a word. Perhaps I really should give him a chance. Not for myself, but for Alan. The child needs a complete family, needs a father's love. And Gary, too, needs an opportunity to prove himself. Over the next few days, Gary visited Alan every day, sometimes even helping me with housework, grocery shopping, and cooking. Gradually, I realized he had truly changed a lot. 4 years ago, Gary never set foot in the kitchen, he couldn't even fry an egg. Now he not only cooks but makes delicious meals. "When did you learn to cook?" I asked him one evening, curious. "The year after we broke up." Gary answered while washing dishes. "Living alone, you have to learn to take care of yourself." "So you've been alone these past 4 years?" I pressed. Gary paused his movements and looked at me. "Are you asking if I've dated anyone else?" I blushed. "I haven't. Had relationships, but none lasted long." Gary was honest. "I realized I couldn't let go of you, so I didn't want to waste anyone else's time either." His words left me feeling a bit complicated inside. On one hand, I felt heartbroken for his years of loneliness, on the other, I was pleased with the place I held in his heart. "So what are you planning to do now?" I asked. "What do you mean?" If we really start over, aren't you afraid we'll break up again? Gary looked at me earnestly. I'm scared, but I'm even more afraid of missing out. Some opportunities, once lost, never come back. I don't want to regret it again. His words struck a chord in my heart. That night, just before bed, Alan suddenly asked me, "Mom, when is Dad moving in to live with us?" "Why do you ask?" I was a bit surprised. Because my classmate said both his parents lived together. I want to live with my dad too. Alan blinked his big eyes at me. I didn't know how to respond. Living with Gary? We hadn't even gotten back together as lovers yet, let alone moved in together. Alan, you can't rush things like this. You have to take it slow, I said. How slow? Alan asked. Wait, until Mom and Dad's relationship gets better. Alan nodded, looking like he sort of understood, then suddenly said, then I'll help you two get closer. The next day was Saturday. I was doing housework at home, and Gary came over too, playing with Alan in the living room. Suddenly Alan ran into the kitchen. Mom, I'm hungry. I want cake. We don't have any cake at home. How about I make you a snack instead? I said. I want strawberry cake. Alan whined. Then we'd have to go to the bakery to buy some, but it's a bit far. Dad and I will go buy it. Alan exclaimed excitedly. But. Gary stepped into the kitchen. It's okay, I'll take him. Then I'll come too, I said. No need. Mom's resting at home. Dad and I will be back soon. Alan tugged Gary toward the door. Before I could say anything, they were already out the door. Half an hour later, they returned, not only with a cake but also a whole bunch of ingredients. Mom, how about we have hot pot at home tonight? Alan suggested. Hot pot? I glanced at the groceries they'd bought. They really were ingredients for hot pot. Dad said hot pot is something only families eat, and now we're a family, so we have to have hot pot. Alan exclaimed excitedly. I glanced at Gary, who shrugged his shoulders innocently at me. That night, we really did have hot pot. 3 people sat around the dining table, the steaming hot pot filling the room with warmth. Alan was especially excited, serving food to me one moment and to Gary the next, acting like a little adult. Dad, do you think Mom is pretty? Alan suddenly asked. Gary glanced at me. Of course she's beautiful. Mom's the most beautiful woman in the world. Then do you love Mom? Alan pressed on. Yes. Gary answered without hesitation. I nearly choked on my soup. Mom, do you love Dad? Alan turned to ask me. I looked into his expectant eyes, unsure how to respond. Mom. Alan shook my hand. Mom loves Dad. I finally said. Alan clapped his hands in delight. That's great. Mom and Dad love each other, so we're a real family now. Seeing how happy he looked warmed my heart. Maybe this is the life I've always wanted, a simple, happy family of 3. After the hot pot, we watched TV together. Alan sat in the middle, with Gary and me on either side. As they watched, Alan drifted off to sleep in Gary's arms. I'll carry him to bed, Gary murmured softly. He carried Alan to the nursery and emerged a short while later. Is he asleep? I asked. Fast asleep, Gary replied, settling back down beside me. The living room was quiet, with only the sound of the TV. Kitty. Gary called out suddenly. Let's start over. I looked at him, my heart racing. I want to build a real family with you both. I want to see Alan every day and be with you both every day. I don't want to miss another moment of Alan's growth, nor do I want to miss another day with you. His words were so sincere, they really moved me. Gary, You don't have to give me an answer right now, but please give it some serious thought, okay? He looked at me, his eyes filled with sincerity. I nodded. Truthfully, I already had an answer in my heart, I just needed a little more courage to say it out loud. On Monday at work, I was distracted, constantly thinking about what Gary had said. My colleague Dora noticed my preoccupation. "Kitty, what's wrong today? You seem deep in thought." I hesitated, then decided to be honest with her. "Dora, I want to ask you something." "What's the matter?" "If your ex-boyfriend wanted to get back together, would you agree?" Dora's eyes lit up. "Something's up. Is it that handsome neighbor?" I nodded. "Oh my gosh. I knew you two had a chance." Dora nearly jumped up with excitement. "Did he confess?" "I guess so." "So did you say yes?" "Still thinking about it." "What's there to think about?" Dora looked puzzled. "Handsome, rich, and into you, where else would you find a guy like that?" "But we broke up before." "I'm worried." "What's there to worry about? People change. Maybe he really has matured now?" Dora urged me. "Besides, didn't you say Alan really likes him? For the child's sake, you should consider it too." Her words left me deep in thought. Yeah, for Alan's sake, should I give Gary another chance? After work, I went to pick up Alan from kindergarten. The teacher pulled me aside again. Alan kept talking about his dad in class today. He seemed really happy. "Really?" "Yeah, he said his dad loves him very much and that he'll be able to live with both his parents soon." The teacher smiled and said, "You can tell Alan really longs for a complete family." The teacher's words struck a chord with me. Perhaps I really should set aside my reservations for Alan's sake. When I got home, Gary was already waiting at the door. "Getting off work so early today?" I asked. "I canceled a meeting to come back early and spend time with Alan," Gary replied. Seeing his weary face, my heart ached for him. He must have given up so much at work for us. "Daddy!" Alan exclaimed, rushing excitedly toward Gary. "Did Alan miss Daddy?" Gary asked, lifting him into his arms. Alan planted a kiss on his cheek. "Daddy, my teacher praised me today." "Why did she praise you?" "Because I helped the new kid. The teacher said everyone should learn from me." Alan declared proudly. "Our Alan is amazing." Gary praised. Watching the father and son interact so affectionately warmed my heart. During dinner, Alan suddenly asked, "Dad, can I come over to your place sometime?" "Of course you can," Gary replied, "but you'll need Mom's permission first." Alan turned to me. "Mom, can I go to Dad's house?" I nodded. "Sure." After dinner, we went to Gary's place together. His home was simply decorated yet warm and inviting, with thoughtful touches everywhere. "Dad, your place is huge," Alan exclaimed excitedly as he ran around. "If you like it, you're welcome to come play anytime," Gary said. Alan ran into the master bedroom and stared at the large bed. "Dad, aren't you scared sleeping in such a big bed all by yourself?" "A little," Gary said with a smile. "Then you can sleep with me," Alan suggested. "Sure, but only if Mom comes too." Gary glanced at me. Alan immediately ran over and grabbed my hand. "Mom, can we all sleep with Dad tonight?" I blushed. "That might not be appropriate." "Why not?" "We're a family," Alan declared with righteous conviction. Faced with my son's innocent words, I didn't know how to refuse. "Mom got shy," Alan suddenly said. Gary laughed. "Then we'll take it slow, no rush." After visiting Gary's house, we returned to mine. While putting Alan to bed, he suddenly asked me, "Mom, when did you marry Dad?" "Alan, marriage is a serious matter, it can't be decided lightly," I said. "Then when can we decide?" Wait until Mom has thought it through." Alan looked at me earnestly. "Mom, are you still mad at Dad?" I paused, taken aback. "Why do you ask?" "Because I can tell Dad loves us very much, but Mom still seems a little unhappy," Alan said earnestly. "Mom, if Dad did something wrong, please forgive him. I want a complete family." Hearing my son's thoughtful words, my eyes welled up. "Alan, Mommy isn't angry with Daddy," I said. "Then why not marry him?" Because mommy needs to be sure daddy truly loves us, not just because of a momentary impulse. Alan nodded uncertainly. When will mom know for sure? Soon, I said, stroking his head. Mom promises you'll know for sure very soon. After Alan fell asleep, I sat in the living room, lost in thought. Maybe Alan was right, I really should let go of the past and give Gary a chance. More importantly, give our family a chance. The next evening, Gary came to visit Alan as usual. Alan pestered him to tell stories, and the two of them had a great time playing in the living room. I was in the kitchen preparing tomorrow's lunchbox, listening to the laughter drifting from the living room, and my heart felt warm. This kind of life is truly wonderful. Mom, come here. Alan called out from the living room. I dried my hands and walked over, finding Alan and Gary sitting on the sofa with a piece of paper on the coffee table in front of them. What's this? I asked curiously. I drew it. Alan exclaimed excitedly. Look, it's our family of 3. I looked at the drawing. Though the artwork was childish, I could see 3 figures standing hand in hand. What a beautiful drawing, I praised. Mommy, look at this house. Alan pointed to a square building in the picture. This is our home, the 3 of us live together. I looked at the simple house and felt a warm glow in my heart. Alan, would you like the 3 of us to live together? I asked. Of course I would. Alan nodded vigorously. Then I could see Mom and Dad every day. I glanced at Gary. He was looking at me too, his eyes full of anticipation. Mom, will you promise? Alan tugged at my hand, looking at me with puppy dog eyes. Facing my son's hopeful gaze, I suddenly made up my mind. Okay, I said. Really? Alan jumped up excitedly. Really? I nodded, then looked at Gary. But there's one condition. What are the conditions? Gary asked. We'll start as lovers and take it slow, no rush. A smile spread across Gary's face. All right, whatever you say. Great. Alan spun around in the living room, overjoyed. We're going to be a real family. Seeing how happy he looked made me happy too. Maybe this really is the best choice. For Alan, and for ourselves. So when are we moving in together? Alan asked. No rush. We'll take our time arranging it, I said. Can Daddy stay here tomorrow night? Alan blinked his big eyes at me. I blushed. Well, he can sleep on the couch. Alan suggested. Gary smiled. Alan, don't put Mom on the spot. We'll take it slow, okay? Alan nodded, though he was a little disappointed. That night, Gary still went back to his own home. But before leaving, he gently kissed my forehead. Thank you for giving me this chance, he whispered. Thank you for coming back to us, I whispered back. From that day on, we officially began dating. Gary came to visit us every day, sometimes having dinner at my place, sometimes taking us out for fun. Alan was especially happy, feeling as excited as if it were a holiday every single day. I gradually let go of my worries and began to savor this sweet life. Gary truly changed a lot, becoming more mature and considerate. He remembered my favorite foods, picked up Alan when I worked late, and took care of me when I was sick. These little things made me believe again that he truly loved us. One weekend a month later, Gary suggested taking us to look at houses. Look at houses? I was a bit surprised. I want to move to a bigger place so Alan can have his own game room, Gary said. Alan was thrilled to hear about the game room. Really? I can have my own game room? Of course, and there's a big garden where Alan can play, Gary said. We looked at several houses and finally found a very satisfying villa in the suburbs. The house has 3 stories, with a small garden in the courtyard. The environment is lovely, perfect for a family to live in. Mom, what do you think of this place? Alan asked me. It's great, I nodded. Then shall we move here? I glanced at Gary, who was also waiting for my answer. Okay, I finally said. On moving day, many friends came to help. When my colleague Doris saw Gary, she was thrilled beyond words. "Oh my gosh, he's even more handsome in person than in photos. Kitty, you're so lucky." Gary is a natural at handling relationships and quickly became friends with my friends. Seeing him chatting happily with everyone filled me with satisfaction. Our new home is spacious, and Alan got his own game room. He was so excited he played in there all day. In the evening, the three of us sat in the living room watching TV. "Mom, we're a real family now, right?" Alan snuggled into my lap and asked. "Yes, we're a family," I said, stroking his head. "So when are you two getting married?" Alan asked again. Gary and I exchanged a glance and both laughed. "Wait until Alan's a little older," Gary said. "Why wait until I'm older?" Alan asked, puzzled. "Because then Alan can be Mom and Dad's little helper and assist with preparing for the wedding," I said. Alan's eyes lit up. "Really? Then I'll grow up fast." Seeing his adorable expression, Gary and I both laughed. Half a year later, we held a simple wedding. Alan wore a little suit and served as our flower boy, looking so cute that everyone couldn't resist taking pictures. At the wedding, Gary said to me, "Kitty, thank you for giving me the most precious gift in the world." "What gift?" I asked. "A home," he said earnestly. "Thank you for making my life whole." My eyes welled up. "I need to thank you too, for coming back to us." Alan shouted from the audience, "Mom and Dad, kiss now." Everyone burst into laughter. Gary and I exchanged a smile, then kissed deeply. Sometimes, fate is truly remarkable. It bestows its most precious gifts upon you when you least expect it. Just like me now, blessed with the husband who loves me most in the world, the sweetest son, and the most well-behaved daughter. This is the life I've always wanted, simple and happy. For years apart have earned us a lifetime together.